Good afternoon, everyone. We just gonna wait 1 minute so everybody actually would be joining the session, and we're gonna start at 4:01. Thank you. Excellent. I think we can start. Again, good afternoon, good morning for anyone actually that is concerned. Welcome to today's event, Cybersecurity and Medical Devices. What are the new challenges? I'm Roland Atui, and I'm Managing Director at Red Alert Labs, and I'll be your host for today. So today we're joined by an expert panel. We're going to be discussing very important aspects on cybersecurity when it comes to medical devices. We're gonna recommend some approaches to take both from the vendors and the consumers' perspectives. So before actually I introduce the speakers and the agenda, I just got a couple of housekeeping bits to go through. Basically, we asked actually the panel to do a very high level actually description today. Very much was regarding the options that we can think about to help you do your independent research and adapt it to your businesses. So please make sure that whatever you take out from this webinar, that you actually make it relative to your business and of course to your role, so you make the best out of it. So we want obviously to interact with you today, and for that you'll be able actually to ask questions through the area of Q&A in your webinar that you can see. You can also ask at any time any support. We'll be actually able to help you as well with regards to any issue that you're having. And then we will actually be running a poll as well, a couple of questions throughout the course of today, so you can also answer the polls. So again, please feel free to submit where you feel actually the questions. We're gonna address these by the end of the webinar, the end session, which will be dedicated only for Q&A sessions. So we're gonna start at the beginning with a panorama about cybersecurity risks on medical devices. We're gonna address then the regulation requirements applied on medical devices and the most relevant standards to ensure those compliance to specifically cybersecurity areas and requirements. Finally, we'll end up with guidance and recommendations for both developers and business buyers that are concerned. So to start that, and I will introduce Philippe Sissoko, who is actually the managing director at Eurofins France. Philippe actually, during his 7 past years, he dedicated on cybersecurity for IoT market in order to complete a range of services and contribute to really trust products in different industrial environments, from smart home to medical devices, healthcare in general, automotive, industrial, energy and transportation. So he will introduce new challenges related to the regulations in the healthcare cybersecurity landscape in this second part. Ayman Khalil will be the second speaker, and he is Chief Operating Officer at Red Alert Labs. He has more than 12 years of proven experience in cybersecurity applied to the embedded system, to ICT, IoT environments, working with a background in both research and industry, and he worked with different companies from labs to vendors, trusted lab, Jamal to Credit Agricole, even banking. So he's really today CEO for Deloitte Labs, managing the lab, and he's gonna have skills of implementing cybersecurity and, of course, evaluation methods that are pretty much adapted to the different industry and sectors, especially the healthcare. So I'm not gonna take much of your time. I'm gonna pass actually right away speech to Ayman to start actually with this presentation. Ayman?
Thank you. Can you hear me well? Perfect.
Yes, perfectly.
So I will try to I'm not sure I have I can manipulate the presentation. Could you please ensure that I have hand on it? Let me verify. I think there's some lagging. Maybe you can, Roland, keep hands on the slide if it's possible, and
no problem. Let's try it this way.
Okay, good afternoon and or good evening, everyone. Thank you, Roland, for this presentation. And I'm very happy and very pleased to be in this webinar to present a very sensitive and important thematic today, which is healthcare and cybersecurity globally. So first of all, I want to maybe present and give a big overview about the panorama of cyber risk in medical devices. And in order to do this, I preferred maybe to start with some figures that could be important to mention because they could have an impact today about the real case of cybersecurity when it comes to healthcare. Roland, please, could you go? Yes. So today, what's important to understand is that 30% of the world's data volume that is currently being generated today by the healthcare industry alone. So this means that it's something that is very important. It's actually huge when we compare this to other industry, and it make it like a very very aimed target, let's say, for attackers. And if you go to the next slide, we can see that during the latest years, we actually, whether it's on European level or on the US level, we had a lot of variety of attack, especially in years 2020, as all of you may know, with the COVID part, that didn't make it easier for healthcare industry to implement security or even to avoid attacks. So these attacks went in terms of impact from simple impacts such as like cancellation of appointment and medical appointment, or even to impact that were a little bit more critical, where, for example, let's say medical surgery were reprogrammed or cancelled. And by the way, in Germany, we had a case where we had the death of a woman because of this type of attack. And yes, today we have a lot of attack. It's a very targeted environment. The next slide shows also a lot of attack in the US, attacks that actually went in terms of impact until $67 million, for example, when it comes to the United Healthcare Services. It's considered one of the most damaging ransomware attacks, by the way, on the healthcare industry globally. And yeah, so why is this happening today and where we are going? Please, Roland, could you go to the next slide? So the healthcare environment is actually very is subject to attacks today. And when we were gonna talk about IoT specifically, it's also something new to healthcare, something new, something emerging. When we ask question for developers, for example, about the security of their medical devices today, 82% of device makers say that they are actually today concerned about the security of the actual implementation of the medical devices and about the ability of being capable of being secured. 82% also of hospitals have already experienced IoT cyber attack in the past 18 months. Next slide, please. So the difference between yesterday and today, it's that before, when we talked about healthcare, attackers were performing attacks with what we call opportunistic way or in an accidental way. Globally, they're gonna perform several type of attack on several industry, let's say, or several type of infrastructure. And when they are capable of exploiting a vulnerability, they're gonna try to do what they can do, let's say, with the data that are collected. Today it's different. Today it's different because healthcare environment have been neglecting security for a little bit long time. I'm not talking about everyone. I'm talking about a major part of the actors. And today they are actually also having complex environment with long life. So it means that it's very complex to change things. So, and as we have a lot of money in this industry, they've been targeted to ransomware. We know, attackers know that people are capable of paying. So this is the difference between yesterday and today and tomorrow also somehow, because we're still remaining with this culture, but we are evolving somewhere. Next slide, please. So with the when we talk about IoT, what is important to know is that naturally we're going to talk about supply chain industry, because IoT is simply the fruit of several actors. So today we have a lot of actors that they will be interacting with each other in order to provide this final IoT environment. And we know that IoT today, it's an industry that's expected to grow massively. But when we talk about growing massively with several type of actors and processes, we're gonna have some concern. Because if we look on the next slide about, for example, the model for IoT phases when it comes to actually the supply chain reference, and here I'm I'm taking this beautiful slide from Anissa. We're talking about actually several phases that will involve several actors, several processes, several assets that need to be accessed by several type of actors, and which make it very complex. Today we're going from the conceptual phase, from the first idea of designing a product, to the retirement phase where we cannot dispose or reuse a specific type of product. This fact make it efficient when it comes to the implementation and from a functional point of view, but at some point also it make it more complex because we need to be capable of ensuring this security during the whole phase. Next slide, please, Ronan. So if we are not able today of closing all these doors about all these phases, somehow we are also giving an opportunity to having potential exploitable vulnerabilities in terms of cybersecurity that could touch several categories of attack. We could talk about physical attack. We could talk about stealing intellectual property. And this could be done by simply reverse engineering some part of the product or any access to the environment of the solution itself. Of course, nefarious activities and abuse. This is something that you all are familiar with. We're talking about ransomware, malware, exploitation of specific hardware port, legal aspect, of course. When it comes to Europe, for example, the GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, is something that is widely used, and especially in healthcare, as we are dealing with patients. So when we are talking about patients, we are talking about manipulating some specific personal data. So this is important. And we have targeted attacks that are linked to that part. Unintentional damage or loss of information. We're talking about using unpatched devices, but not only using some unverified code, for example, from something that we have integrated into our product or into our solution. All these type of attacks today represent clearly a risk for our solution. Our solution during the design phase, but not only, even during their maintenance phase. And I think we're gonna see this a little bit more into details with the presentation and how regulation could potentially answer these risks. So Roland, I leave the floor for you. Please stay with us. I'm gonna have also a few more slides after Philippe. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ayman, for this great introduction overview. It seems that yeah, I mean the problem is very clear. The risks are very clear and very particular to this domain. And actually, you pointed some real good point here about this lack of incentive that the different stakeholder might have to be able to think cybersecurity by design, especially in this environment where we talk about safety and I'm sure actually that the different organizations, government, industry are taking this very seriously. So Philippe, could you tell us a bit more? Is the regulation, what regulations there, and actually are they helping creating this incentive? That would be very much helpful to everyone.
Okay, thank you, Roland. Thank you, Roland, and good evening, everyone. I'm very pleased to participate to this webinar and give you my update of this regulation, this new regulation for medical devices, and also share with you how the regulation can support the development of the new equipment. I think there is two main things which are very important: of security by design, as Ayman said, but I think that also the regulation framework can help. But as you know, there is a lot of tasks regarding the development of standardization on cybersecurity. Let's first of all focus on these medical things and what is the state of the art regarding this regulation. Okay, next. I can try maybe to, okay. First of all, I want to introduce and make an update of the timeline of this new regulation. I think most of you know that this regulation have come in force May last year, and now we are in the, oh, what's happened?
No problem. You can continue. Just the poll actually was launched, but that's you can actually continue on the other side. No,
but there is something, a sondage in my. What's happened?
Apologies in that case. So
I have your screen, Roland. Ah, okay.
Now it's back. Okay.
Now it's okay. It's back. Okay. As I just said, most of you know that this regulation was adopted in 2018-17 and was coming in force in May 21. And now we are in the period of grace, how we said. And during this period, both regulations are applicable. And of course, most of manufacturers are working to make that their product comply with the new one. It is a very huge action to implement, as there is a lot of change in this new regulation. There is the scope of product. I just give some things which are very new in this new regulation, and the identification for the manufacturer of in the company who is responsible of the medical devices. There is also a lot of things regarding the clinical investigation and clinical evaluation. The essential requirement in the actual directive now, the right name is performance. There is a lot of performance, and in those performance, cybersecurity is a very strong part of those requirements. And you know also that cybersecurity, or you will know that cybersecurity can involve also a lot of things in the performance, in the security, in the data privacy of the medical devices. But the key message regarding this slide is that from May 24, all the products put on the market must comply with the new MDR regulation. And there is a period of 1 year between May 24 and May 25. And during this period, all products assessed during 21 and 2024 and May 24, there is 1 year during this period. The product complying with the MDD can be sold, but from May 25, the new regulation will be mandatory for all products. Okay, just to give you the structure of the new regulation, there is a lot of chapters. I think there is 10 chapters, and this is in each chapter you have requirement, the scope. We can see in this slide the scope, how identification, the traceability, the notified body. There is also a lot of change regarding the notified body, and the requirement now to become notified body are very huge. As you know, in the MDD, there was in Europe maybe around 70 notified body. And with this new regulation at this time, currently I talk with you, the number of notified body regarding this new regulation is 28. You know, it is a very huge problem for the manufacturer. As you know, I think that there is around 24,000 products to certify during this period. Is very short, and I'm quite sure that mathematics, in terms of mathematics, it's impossible for me if there is no new appointment of new notified body. And the second next, and this is the last content of this new regulation. The post-market surveillance is something very important and very strong in this regulation. I just want to stop to highlight this topic, because cybersecurity is key regarding post-market, because as you know, for a lot of products, the vulnerability will evolve every day, and you need to be sure that the product you put on the market, or the product you sold previously, 1 year after or some months after, the cybersecurity will be online with the new vulnerability of the new threat we can find in the market. And after, in the last chapter, there is the final provision. The next slide gives a comparison between just the two directives. As you can see, in the MDD, you have a 60-page, 23 articles and annexes. And in the new MDR, you have 177 pages, a lot of articles, as I explained, because there is new requirement. And there is also a lot of annexes explaining a lot of things regarding how the conformity assessment, the classification. And beside the directives, there is also the European Commission implemented a lot of guidelines to explain the application and of this regulation, and how specific requirement must be applied. And the next slide gives just a comparison between MDD and Mdr. What is new from the Mdr and from the Mdd and the Mdd directive. As you can see, there is a lot of new things. Technical documentation and pre-market, post-market surveillance is very, very important. New also things on the declaration of conformity, the EU declaration of conformity. And there is also something very important regarding this new regulation, the UDI information. It is a unique identification of the medical device. All medical device will be recorded as soon as they get certification. They will be recorded in a database managed by the European Commission, and it is something also new in this new regulation. And I can also, just the last sentence, the classification also is something very strong in this new regulation. Most of product, there is also a specific requirement for product of class 3, class 2E, 2B, regarding the way we will attest their conformity. And the last thing, which are very important also, there is no, how I can say, grandfathering. You know, if a product is complying, it's very difficult to say, okay, I can use it or I can use it to demonstrate the conformity of the other equivalent product. Is no longer applicable in this new regulation. How we can have in the United States with PM post-market 510K. Okay, and this is the last comparison regarding the annexes of the MDR. As you can see, there is a lot of annexes from 8 to now 13 annex. Each annex is giving no, sorry for me. There is it's not the last slide. It's 17 annex. Each annex gives the requirement. Okay. Now let's jump to the cybersecurity. As you know, as I just said, there is a lot of new requirement on this new regulation. And our subject today during this webinar is cybersecurity. I just want to, I will now in this part of my presentation introduce the cybersecurity, and as Eman said, how cyber regulation can support the conformity and the mitigate the cybersecurity risk. I think I want to highlight 2 articles on this regulations, 17.2 and 17.4. Both of them are talking about cybersecurity. As you can say, software shall be developed and manufacturing in accordance with the state of the art. I will show you in the, and also including information security. I think that Eman will develop more those items in his presentation. And the second things which are very important is that manufacturers shall set out minimum requirement concerning the hardware, the IT networks, characteristic and IT security measure, including, of course, the protection of unauthorization access, password, how you will manage the software, and so on. So I think those 2 articles are very important and bring a lot regarding the cybersecurity of medical device. But let's continue, and I will show you how now it is implemented in this regulation. As I explained also at the beginning of my presentation, there is a lot of guidelines issue provided by the European Commission. One of them, the MDCG 2019 part 716. Next one, give how it is a guideline explaining how we can apply cybersecurity on medical device. As you can see in this slide, I just copy this page of this annex, giving the general application of the cybersecurity. I think we can emphasize the fact that there is a general safety and performance requirement to take into account, with, of course, focus on cybersecurity. And there is one part, one block, one pillar regarding the IT security, one pillar regarding the safety, security, effectiveness, how the measure you will implement will be efficient and avoid lack of security. And there is also, as Eman said, the security design to be sure that the product will be designed by integrated security function on the software, on the code, on a lot of things dealing with cybersecurity. You need also to identify the threat, the vulnerability, and be ready and update your software if there is any new vulnerability to take into account. Next. Okay, direct. We can, if we go deeply on the analysis of this guideline, we can see that there is a direct and indirect requirement for medical device, of course. As you know, most of legislation, European legislation, can create overlapping because there is a lot of topic dealing with security, performance, safety. But at the end of the day, what is sure that those four items must be taken into account: the risk management and control, information from the manufacturer, integrator, to be sure that the manufacturer, the integrator, the operator of the user, the final user, like a hospital, have all information regarding the security of the product. And the security during the life cycle of the product and the post-market activity, vulnerability disclosure. You need to follow the vulnerability and be sure that your product are not concerning by the new vulnerability. As you know, the regulation will give the general provision of what, the general requirement, and the standardization and the guideline will give you the way to demonstrate the compliance of according those requirements. Next. Just to give you a summary of the cybersecurity related to MDR, in the actual in the MDD, there was also cybersecurity, but it was not identified clearly as cybersecurity requirement. Software, of course, as well defined in the MDD, but cybersecurity was not really clearly named. But now in the MDR, there is clear provision, there is clear requirement regarding the cybersecurity. And in last May 21, when the directive, the regulation came in force, the harmonized standard published, the European Commission published some draft. It is draft or harmonized standard. It is a standard which can be harmonized when the directive, the regulation will be applicable in 2024. I think that there is a real need for the medical industry. There is a real need to know exactly how they will assess their product against cybersecurity. And I think for certification body and notified body also, we need also to have a very clear view regarding the way and how we will assess the product. Next. This slide gives you an overview of the main standards which are on the race to demonstrate the conformity of medical devices. as you can see, I distinguish the safety part and the security part. In the MDD, the safety part was very well furnished, and now in the new MDR, in the new regulation, there is a very security part which is identified, and we can. It is the standard. I think there is a big chance that they will become harmonized in the next months. I think so. Next. And just I give you also this certification existing document. There is a lot of, as explained, sometimes there is also overlaps, but now the documentation of regarding cybersecurity are very well done. There is sometimes some overlaps, but the general philosophy is now adopted, and those two standards I mentioned in the previous slide came from industrial because they are very close to IEC 62443, and I think there is now a kind of convergence regarding the regulation we can apply. Regarding cybersecurity. As you know, cybersecurity is cybersecurity. Of course, after there is some vertical you need to take into account regarding your product is used in medical, automotive, aircraft, and so and so. But there is some basic requirement, the convergence of basic requirement we have now more and more in the literature and standardization. Next. And this part also is very strong if focus on cybersecurity. As I explained during the presentation, the post-market surveillance is something which is increasing in the new regulation. You need to follow the product, post-market surveillance. You need to prove that you will maintain the conformity of the product during all the life, and I highlight the cybersecurity topic. And during this post-market surveillance, and the PSU is a periodic safety update report. You need to also to have a periodic. You can have periodic. And also the notified body can also sample check your product and ask a laboratory to test or conform for assessment body to check if your product available on the market is still complying with cybersecurity requirement. This part is very strong regarding cybersecurity. This post-market approach will include various elements. Operation of the device in the intended environment, information sharing, coordinated vulnerability disclosure, and so on. So there is a lot of things to take into account in this post-market surveillance related to cybersecurity. Next. And one thing also to conclude, I think for us, because I belong to a notified body, because in Eurofins we have 3 notified bodies in Europe. 2 are already appointed regarding MDR. We have 1 in Finland and 1 also in Italy, which are appointed according, and soon we will also be appointed in Germany regarding this new regulation. I think it is very important for notified body to know exactly how they will assess the product. Because last time a customer called me and said, Philippe, do you know if you are notified body, how you will assess cybersecurity? I think it's very important, this question, and to know exactly the way, because the manufacturer will submit in the technical file the conformity assessment, the conformity relating to cybersecurity. Those topics I put here are very important to know for the notified body in order to develop that. And to conclude, as I explained, for notified body, and we have a lot of services we can provide, testing, notified body, and as I just explained, and notified body part relative to audit. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Philip, for this really great overview, and I think very interesting comparison. I think that's many of the audience were interested to understand, of course, what's actually this new regulation is bringing, and what they would like to more understand, of course, is like how this is impacting each one of them. And of course, that's hopefully Ayman will be able also to help in his presentation to give some additional recommendations for that. Thanks a lot, Philip. I'll give actually the hand to Ayman.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Ronan, do you have, will you be able to give me the hand on the slide, or we proceed the same way?
I just tried, please. Okay, let's proceed the same way. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So, thank you, Philip. I think it's very important what you have presented, because it will allow me to proceed also with some few, let's say, text concentration about regulation, and how actually what are the challenges that we could have today in order to be capable of being compliant to a specific regulation, a specific standard, or whatever business need in terms of cybersecurity. So when it comes to IoT, as I mentioned before, the supply chain is one of the main challenges. It's not the only challenge, it's one big challenge, because today we are having more and more complex supply chain governance. Okay, we're talking about more complex because the volume of third-party partners are actually incrementing and increasing in a massive way, and also the type of access to data today is different. It should be done by several actors, and what is the good news but make things even harder is that customers and employees are asking for more transparency, for more visibility about how everything is done and how they want it to be done. So this is good, but it's also complicating and making things harder for manufacturers, for example, to be compliant to regulation. And also cyber attackers, as we said before, we said that healthcare is targeted more and more. And when it comes to supply chain, attackers are more wise, let's say, today, and they have more money than before, because we have organization behind the attacker's profile. So today they are seeking for the pain point in each supply chain. It could be even an embedded silly, let's say, part of the code of the software that is embedded inside the dummy IoT device, which should be actually secured, but because we haven't proceeded maybe into a risk analysis, a global risk analysis about the solution, we didn't actually do any measure around this part. So today we have a lot of responsibilities that should be shared between all actors, and this is a global challenge. This is a very important challenge. If we go deeper into the challenges with manufacturers, which is the next slide, please, Roland. Manufacturers clearly today have a lot of challenges. I'm not capable of doing this in this webinar and giving the exhaustive list, but clearly if there are some manufacturers in the audience, they will know clearly that from a culture point of view, the healthcare environment, the healthcare industry itself, we have a very big gap in the culture that should be done, that was done before, and let's say where we are today. We're talking today about regulation. When it comes to regulation, we're not anymore into choices. We are into the reality of implementing. We need to implement. If not, it's going to impact our business, right? So today we have a gap. We don't have manufacturers. They don't have the culture or the processes ready to answer this regulation, unfortunately. But this is a challenge, but they need to. And when it comes, if they don't have this culture or these processes in place, naturally there's a gap between actually the new requirements that are to be implemented and the reality of their implementation. Okay, and of course, this regulation, as Philip was clearly, please, Ron, could you go back to the slide before? Thank you. And clearly for the, actually the regulation that were discussed, for example, by Philip, we know that we have a lot of interconnected processes that before they were not managed by the same person and still are not managed by the person itself. So challenge also manufacturer, and not only manufacturer, also business buyer have also a lot of challenges when they want to identify actually and to understand what is applicable in their own case, in their own activities. What should I or should I not look into? Which standard, which regulation? This is a very important point today. Manufacturer don't have this visibility, don't know how to attack the topic in order to implement the cybersecurity. So when we want to address cybersecurity aspect, it will impact our actual existing process or non-existing process. Either way, whether it's linked directly to risk management or even to the design or development phase. And the final two challenges that are also important to mention are the resources. Whether manufacturers decided to actually have internal resource to manage cybersecurity. Today we have the lack of, let's say, in-depth knowledge when it comes to IoT. And the other part is, okay, but what should I manage internally? What should I delegate to external parties that have? This is today something that is, it's a big of a challenge, because as we don't have the expertise, we don't know how to attack this topic. And of course, an old challenge that we have, and it's also kind of applicable in the industrial, let's say, operational environment, is the link between security and safety. So clearly, most of the companies are dealing with these two parts differently, with in a governance that where maybe both let's say division don't talk with each other. And today, when it comes to IoT, especially in healthcare environment, as we have impacts on physical impacts on the people, and clearly some of the missions should be managed together, and this is a big challenge today. If we go to the business buyers, we also have the same challenge for compliance. We need to be compliant. This is not a choice. We said regulation is not a choice, so we need to be compliant. We need to be compliant. It means we need to have visibility. We need to have visibility and transparency. I'm not talking only about see what the supply chain or where what is implemented where in our supply chain, but also the transparency about the actual vulnerabilities that we have on the component, on the software side, on actually the organizational level of all third parties that are involved in the supply chain. So business buyers have these challenges, but also they cannot say that's only the manufacturer responsibility. It's a joint responsibility that need to be assumed by every party. But where is the cursor? Where is the limit of my responsibility? This is a big challenge today. And understanding the security issues and the potential solution, because at the same time, I have my time to market. So if I don't manage it at my own level, the requirement that I want the developer and manufacturer to be compliant to, it means that I won't be managing it the right way. This being said, maybe I should finish on a slide where you can have some key takeaways about what to do in a generic way. Of course, I'm not going deep into the operational part because we won't have all the time that you need, unfortunately, even if it's my pleasure to discuss it further through question or even after this webinar. So today we should think regulation by design. And Philip introduced regulations that are not the only one. Of course, when we're going to talk about international level, we're going to have others potentially. And what is good today is when we want to implement a regulation, we need standards. We need standards, something that is harmonized. And gladly today we have harmonized standards. So we should be capitalizing on these existing standards in order to build this regulation by design from a culture point of view, but also from an organizational and implementation point of view. The second part, which is very important, and unfortunately I don't have the time to go more into detail, but I will leave you an annex to the presentation, two beautiful slides prepared by Tom Arger, that I can see he's in the participant list, and thank you for being here, Tom. And the providing SBOM for critical software, at least for critical software, because SBOM is something that is very pushed in the US today, but also even when we look into ENISA document, we see that this is something that is clearly is gonna arrive. SBOM is what we call software bill of material, which is a formal record of that will give details about the implementation, about the supply chain relationship, the various components that are used, and also what are the vulnerability. The two slides that you're gonna have in annex, they're gonna tell you about why a manufacturer should be providing this and how it's gonna help him in his day-to-day life of activity, and also why hospitals, for example, should be asking for this specifically. I'm gonna keep this for you as a reading part, which is very, very important. Third part in the before the latest one is the IoT software development labeling program. This is very important, especially when it comes to the pushing awareness and educating public about the security and capability of IoT. Is very important to have this today, as we have actors that they are not, from a culture point of view, also involved in this cybersecurity culture, at least not for now. And finally, requesting cybersecurity assessment from all your supplier. This is something that is done in all industry, but what it should be done in order to be capable in healthcare environment to improve, let's say, the security, it should be automated. It should be automated in a way that it should be part actually of the procurement process, in a way that not only to cover ISMS. I saw in the list of questions something about, is 27001 sufficient? I'm gonna take advantage of this specific last point to answer this part. It is not sufficient, but it is somehow mandatory in a way, because we have requirements in ISO 27001 that are very important to keep, to ensure, but it's not sufficient in a way. When we're talking about IoT solution globally, we're not talking only about information system, we're talking also about product. And today we have baseline, very good baselines, such as ETSI, that could be applicable to any type of IoT product that should be at least verified. We have also the 62443, the 60601. We have standard for product, for processes, and all the type of, let's say, part of the supply chain that should be verified. So everything related to this should be managed somehow. And I think that's all for me. I hope that we gave you more information about how to deal with cybersecurity in healthcare environment. Roland, I will leave the floor for you.
Thanks a lot, Ayman, and I really appreciate that you already started the Q&A session to answer also question, because we received a lot of questions, and we have very little time. What I can guarantee to all of you that we're gonna try actually to answer a few of the questions, and we'll keep the other questions. We'll get back to you with the answers individually, or even actually if that needs sharing, we're gonna share it with everyone. So thanks a lot. I meant for this conclusion and the takeaways. I'm gonna ask first question, was just actually asked at the beginning when Philip actually introduced the Mdd, Mdr. Could you tell us very quickly what's actually Mdd and Mdr stands for? I think the abbreviation, just actually to help the one who actually asked it to medical device requirements. I think Mdr. Philippe, do you?
I think it was answered, if I'm not mistaken, in the medical device directive. Yes.
Yeah, and the medical device directive. Excellent.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. MDD is medical device directive, and MDR is medical device regulation.
Excellent. Thanks a lot. I mean, there's a question, actually, if I get it well, is the technical building requirement? I'm not sure actually if there's somebody actually requested. I'll ask the other question. Is there a differentiation class of devices with communication interfaces, internet access, and closed device with no external interfaces?
No, because
so I think different types of devices.
Okay. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that to make short, the classes are defined regarding, of course, of the purpose of the medical devices. The definition and the criteria related to the classes are strongly linked to the functionality of the product. As you know, there is class 1. It's depending on the risk. It is the risk. What is more important and take into account in this classification is the risk of the product. For example, risk 3 is a class with a stronger risk, like it's more, for example, most of invasive products are class 3 because the risk is stronger in this category of product.
Okay, thanks. So it's good to know. Then there's a question related to the FDA, which actually recently published and updated draft guidance on cybersecurity. What are the similarities and the differences with the MDCG, and what processes does the manufacturer need?
I guess that there is now a lot of similitude between the two documents, because in the previous publication of the FDA, it was more vulnerability, to know the vulnerability, and also, of course, to assess the product. And now there is a kind of convergence between the MDCG I just identify in my presentation and the FDA new publication.
Excellent, thanks a lot. I think we can take just very quickly one last question. Maybe are there any? You have presented actually several challenges for manufacturers today. When it comes to compliance, according to your experience, what is the most common one, and what is the more difficult to achieve? I think probably that's goes to Ayman.
Oh, well, very good question. Actually, let's say in my experience, and according actually to the level of maturity today, the most common one is actually to identify what should I be compliant to. And because also the regulation and the standards are, some of them are mature, some of them are started to be applicable, and others are ongoing, and manufacturers don't have this specific visibility about the content and about the actual scope of applicability. So I must say that actually this one is the most common one, at least at this level. I'm sure that in 3 or 4 years it won't be my answer to this question, but it is the actual one. And I think you asked about the difficulty, the most difficult one, right? The second part. And the most difficult one, I should say, that is everything related to, it's a combination of several challenges that I have mentioned. And I would say the changing our habit, our culture, and our actual implementation. Because when we need to change the culture and our, let's say, way of thinking about implementing cybersecurity, indirectly we need to change our processes internally. We need to change our governance internally, and we need to change our way of implementing. So this is the most difficult one.
That's very clear. Changing our habits. These regulations might impact us indeed, every organizations. I would like to thank you very much, because we are actually in respect of time at the end of this session, for this valuable, really input. I think, I hope actually the audience actually got the best out of it. We will follow up with any questions and answers actually that they were not questions that were not answered, and please feel free as well to get in touch if you have any additional questions. You'll have our information actually on the website or on the LinkedIn page. Thank you very much, and I hope that we actually will meet another series of webinars soon. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.